the summer season upon us, excitement is in the air. The warmer days filled with summer fun can certainly be a thrilling time for recent retirees.
It definitely is, Leah. Spending those retirement days giving back to your community or even spending time with your family and grandchildren are certainly well earned. Perhaps you may even be thinking about buying that second home. In this episode, we will cover the important aspects to consider when financing a second home. But first, let me read our disclaimer. This podcast is being recorded on June 13th, 2024. The contents of this podcast are strictly for informational purposes only, and nothing said should be taken as tax, investment, or legal advice. It is important to discuss your strategies with a professional before making any financial decisions, as the strategies discussed may not be suitable for you specifically.
So let's get started with the whys. There are many reasons why one might consider purchasing a second home. It might be an alternative to renting a home, you might be fulfilling a dream of becoming a snowbird, or you might just be purchasing your second property to be closer to your friends and family. These are all things that you should consider.
The first thing to do is to pick a location. While thinking about places, don't forget about people. We people are human beings, and we are also social creatures. We live best when we have meaningful interaction with others. So if you're a snowbirder, you get to have an opportunity to add to their social circle by reaching out and making new neighbors.
Yeah, and just remember, by having that second property, it'll give you an excuse to go down to a warmer location, maybe for a midwinter vacation.
The second thing to consider is, can I afford a second home? Owning a second home can be an exciting prospect, but it's essential to assess your financial situation carefully. Leah has some insights here to help you determine if you can afford that second home.
Yeah, so to get started, you want to calculate your budget for this second home. Take your monthly income and debt by calculating your employment income before taxes, other sources of income, any debt payments that you have, including your primary residence mortgage, any housing expenses and other expenses, and then you'll want to take a good look at that and see what can you afford out of that budget. Then you'll want to look at your debt to income ratio. If your ratio exceeds certain amounts that lenders have, which you'll want to check with them, it could be challenging for you to get that second home. Once you have all this information gathered, you'll want to see what available amount do you have. If your debt to income ratio is too high, as I said before, you might have to find a way to increase some more income or reduce any debt so you can afford that second home.
Moving forward to the cash flow considerations. Utilities is one of the first cash flow considerations to look at. You'll need to budget for monthly electricity, water, gas, and other utilities each month. Depending on the location, their costs may be higher than your primary residence.
Yeah, and another thing to consider with that cash flow is any maintenance cost. All homes need additional maintenance, so it could be from lawn care, snow removal, or other just routine maintenance on the house. Depending on the age and the condition of the property, you may have the budget in there for a new roof, driveway, patio, deck, anything that might come up. Consider these when you're evaluating purchasing that second home. This is what the expected startup cost would be. So make sure you put this into your long-term planning budget.
Yeah, and making sure that you're budgeting out for property taxes in the mix, even if your mortgage payment is relatively small. Some states out there will have a much higher property taxes than others, and it really depends on the location of where you pick your second home.
Exactly, and another thing that you'll want to look at is insurance planning as well. You'll want to have your base coverage on the home, but you'll also want to look in certain areas, such as Florida, maybe for flood insurance.
As we mentioned earlier with property taxes, it's also important to know your tax situation. The tax breaks and credits that you enjoy in your primary residence may not apply to your second home. Depending on the home's location, your personal income, and legal right to rent the property, your property taxes and other deductions might vary.
Exactly, and as Lyndsey mentioned, if you're planning to rent the property out, maybe you're just going there for a couple of months out of the year. If you do intend to rent it for more than 14 days a year, the IRS will see this as rental property income, and they will tax the income at that income rate. So that's something you should keep in mind when planning to rent it out.
So in conclusion, funding that second home in retirement requires careful planning and considerations. As you begin to explore the opportunity, keep in mind these following key points.
Number 1, do a financial assessment.
Number 2, budget and affordability.
Number 3, take a look at your debt management.
Number 4, interest rates.
And number 5, your long-term goals. Remember that your second home can provide enjoyment and potential income for you, but it's essential to strike a balance between your dreams and your financial well-being. Also, keep in mind the affordability varies depending on individual circumstances, so it's essential to consult with a financial advisor and explore the options that are tailored to your situation.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and stay tuned for our next one. And as always,
Don't forget, share the wealth.